So first thing, before we do anything else, close your eyes.
Okay.
Entertain me. Big, deep breath in. Now picture yourself as just an air, like you're just consciousness. You're not your body. And imagine that spreads out to fill up the entire room. And as you do it, exhale. Inhale. Now, imagine that the building is gone and it spreads out across the entire world. And now, the entire universe. Okay, I'm ready.
Wow.
So Molly, tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, my name is Molly Heady-Carroll, and I'm a creature consultant for games and animation. I've worked in the games and animation industry for about 10 years as a freelancer. I've worked for, among other things, Night School Studios, Universal, BBC, Netflix, Anarchy Studios, Impact Gameworks, bunch of different things. I also co-founded Arcane Circus, a game studio in the Netherlands where I live. And there my pet project is Zenibeasts, which is visible in the background here, which is about giant monsters destroying a 90 Saturday morning cartoon city. Mm-hmm. And besides that, I also give lectures about creature design at universities, studios, and I teach at the Utrecht University of the Arts in Utrecht.
So when you teach a subject like this, yesterday here in the office, we get the chance to see you kind of give your presentation and everything, but how does one teach?
How does one teach?
And how does one teach something like creature design? I mean, it's such a work of the imagination. What are the fundamental skills that make up that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I've spent my entire life learning about creatures and by proxy, real-world animals. I actually wanted to be a zoologist before I got into the art world.
No, a herpetologist.
A herpetologist, a reptile scientist, indeed.
Yes, reptiles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way I like to say it is that I wanted to study animals and now I make up my own for a living. And I've spent my entire life, accumulating knowledge of real-world animals and analyzing creatures in media. I was a big monster kid growing up. I'm a big fan of Universal monsters and kaiju films and things like that. Teaching is kind of new for me, though. I've been teaching at the HKU as a freelancer for a while, but this is the first year that I'm actually on a contract. Mm-hmm. And I think a good way to teach is... at least a good approach to take is to kind of remember the things that were important to me when I was the age of my students, because there was information I got that just blew my mind at that age, and trying to remember where I was at that time I think helps a lot. And also thinking very consciously about why I do things a certain way, like analyzing my own methods. Mm-hmm. So that I can communicate it to students is also very, very important.
I spent some time teaching meteorology to students, and I realized when I started teaching that I actually didn't know anything. Or I couldn't articulate my thoughts. There's so much that you kind of fundamentally understand in your own head, which is the reason why I asked the question. When you're teaching someone else to do something that you just inherently sort of know how to do, like by the time you've become an expert or whatever, it's like trying to tell someone the mechanics of like how to ride a bicycle. It feels so natural. So for you, when you're trying to I assume that like a student has an idea of that they want to be designing creatures or whatever before they ever step in the door. You're not just like picking up.
Well, sometimes no. Sometimes they know they want to work in games, but they, at least with my students at the HKU, because it's game art, mm-hmm. Sometimes they know that they want to do games and work in that pipeline, but they don't know exactly where. So when they take a class from me, they kind of give creature design a chance, and then they either learn more about the world that they want to work in, or they realize this is exactly what I'm interested in. But for me personally, I mean, like I'm really, really passionate about creatures. Like my whole world is just that. Mm-hmm. If I can talk about creatures, I'm happy, kind of thing. And my life is designed around doing that as much as possible, kind of thing. But I think really it's sort of like a Trojan horse when I teach, where I'm talking about creature design, but the students I'm talking to, they might not be as passionate about it, or maybe they just kind of are curious about it. The really important thing for me is that the students are tapping into being like a really honest version of themselves and what they enjoy, and figuring out what it is that makes their soul sing, and doing that as much as possible. Because that happens sometimes as well, where somebody who isn't focused on creatures is inspired by how passionate I am about the things that I'm interested in, and that sparks something in them. It always makes me happy when that happens.
What, in your opinion, your professional opinion, is a creature?
A creature?
Yeah.
A fictional being.
Okay. What about a real creature?
A real creature is a non-fictional being.
All right, but so does the word creature inherently mean fictional?
No, I don't think so. I think creatures can be real or imagined.
Yeah. We went to the zoo earlier.
Yeah.
And you got to see some actual creatures.
I did,
And,
yeah.
One of the things in your lecture that we talked about yesterday was, I asked this specific question about, I think, mythological creatures, and we had gotten into this tangent about how oftentimes these are like sort of a hodgepodge or a mashup of different things. But when it comes to like real life creatures, how do they inspire a design for something that doesn't exist?
The cool thing about being a creature designer is that it is a design process.
Mm-hmm.
Where you research, ideate, prototype, and you go round and round and round, refining a solution to a problem. The cool thing is that nature has already done this millions of times for millions of very specific circumstances, which is what we call species. So the real world zoology you can reference because those are systems that actually work. You know that they function. So looking at nature is useful because you're able to look at examples of behaviors, anatomy, looks of animals that work, that you can then translate into your made-up creature to make them feel believable.
Right. That's so interesting. And you sort of have to kind of get a feel for the laws of physics and how they affect a creature. Like, for instance, Godzilla, there's always that debate about something that big's bone structure couldn't be real, that sort of thing, but it still has to move and feel like it exists in a potential world.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the limitations of a project, I mean, you can get a very surreal project, like, I don't know, like Yellow Submarine, the creatures in that, which I really, really love, they don't have to necessarily apply to the laws of physics as much as a fictional thing. But yeah, like with a Godzilla, where, it wouldn't be able to work. I mean, as long as it functions for the story, like the reality of it is less important to me, and more kind of, is it fulfilling the requirements of the piece of media more than anything else? But yeah, nature is a huge influence on every artist, I think. I mean, like, I can't, if I just did my best to not reference nature, I couldn't come up with anything as mad as an actual species that exists. Like, there's parasites that enter sickleback fish and through hormones, alter their brain behavior so they don't hide from shadows, so they get eaten by birds because they need a warm environment to finish their development process, and then they lay eggs which go in the water with like, that's mental. If you came up with that off the top of your head, people go, that's stupid, that wouldn't work, but it exists in nature.
Is it lion's mane mushrooms that like infect ants?
Yeah,
and like they explode and then the spores spread everywhere inside of the colony. So if the ants discover that one of their buddies has been infected, they just carry them out way away from the anthill, whatever the fuck they live in.
The colony.
The ant hive where they make the honey. These guys are laughing at me. But yeah, it's amazing. Like, there's so many cool things in nature that are just like mind blowing. As you said, you couldn't come up with anything crazier if you tried.
Yeah.
Even if you do, like, it's interesting. You can only kind of draw from what you've experienced in a way.
Yeah.
Or you'll find that you've had some parallel thought, and then you discover later, like, oh, Oh, well, I guess the big guy upstairs thought of that one before me.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Some creature designers really obsess about every element of their creature existing in having some kind of real world parallel in order to make it feel believable. But personally, I think that's kind of skipping the point, which is you're referencing nature because it's a system that you know functions, that you can maybe mix up into an interesting way, mix this behavior with this particular environmental factor, this and that. I think it's more that there is room to, you know, like be creative or have things that maybe wouldn't function in reality but are interesting for the particular piece of media. So yeah, I don't find it necessarily like, it's not like you're always just drawing from nature. It's just a huge influence, and it's infinite.
Did you guys have Neopets in Europe?
Yeah, I played Neopets when I was
so you were
younger.
total dweeb.
I was into that. I was really, I played it. I was a dweeb for Pokemon. Pokemon was huge for me when I was growing up. Oh, is.
Still.
Thank you. Is.
Still are.
Still is, indeed.
Yeah. If you're following Molly on like LinkedIn, it's just Pokemon shit. I mean, the amount of events that you go to, this is kind of a subject change, but it is like when do you ever get shit done? all this teaching and creature designing you're doing is like, it seems like you just travel around and buy Pokemon cards.
I mean, that is a thing that I do. I do a lot of work while I'm traveling. I like getting out my surface and doing my freelance work or working on my cartoons and stuff like that on the road. I feel the most myself when I'm making art while traveling to some exotic place. I enjoy that hugely.
Well, the first day that you were here, welcome to Denmark, by the way. Have you enjoyed your stay so far?
I have. It's been lovely.
I had kind of cut you off in the middle of a conversation because I was like, let's save this for the podcast. And one of them was, we were talking about Pokemon and Digimon, and now I've just thought of Neopets just now, but stuff like that. There's so many different franchises that have tried to capture this idea of having these like little friends that you can have this relationship with in a digital or cardboard world or whatever it happens to be. What is it about humans, in your opinion, that like drives that sort of thing? Why is that so popular?
I mean, pets are popular with people. I mean, a Pokemon is essentially like having a pet, like a dog, that's loyal to you. Everybody loves dogs, so I mean, that's kind of a factor. So you have like the most cool creature that's designed to appeal to exactly the type of person you are, and it's your best friend. I mean, that's very appealing to a person. That is an interesting question, though. Like, why do humans enjoy the company of other animals? I guess it reminds us that we're a living thing on this planet that shares it with all these other creatures. I mean, I feel tremendous joy from connecting with animals. Like, I get this really deep enjoyment out of that. Like, I have two pet leopard geckos called Spot and Dot that I've had for 20 years. Which is very, very old for leopard geckos. I've had them since I was 10, and I've taken a lot of effort to socialize them. I'm also very lucky that they're very, very friendly. And I find it really wonderful when they connect with me, like they communicate with me. Leopard geckos are able to recognize human faces. So when they see me, they know it's me. So they light up and they look me right in the face, and they'll like blink at me or they'll wink at me to kind of get my attention. And when they want to come out of their tank, they look at me, make sure they've got my attention, and then they go like this. And if I put my hand in the tank, they climb on my hand. So they're talking to me, then they're telling me what they want. And I get such joy from that with animals. Or like today at the zoo where there's tigers and you slow blink at them, which is a cat greeting, and they do it back. It's just wonderful, you know, like you're talking to this animal. I find that really, really enjoyable.
Yeah. That's something that gets talked about a lot now with, you know, like assistant artificial intelligence things, Siri, you name it. Have you seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix?
I have not, no.
I'm going to spoil a bit of it for all of you. So in the film, Joaquin Phoenix's character is a professional greeting card writer, or like letter writer, basically. Like the world has lost the art form of, you know, a personalized note. So people pay him to write, you know, happy anniversary letters, love letters, etc. And then he gets an upgrade to his operating system, and it is this totally personalized, like down to the your preference of voice, etc. And it's, you know, basically made exactly for him. And of course, he falls in love with it. And then as it develops into a more and more sentient AI, eventually it goes beyond him, and it breaks his heart and all that. But I felt the same way about like my Blaziken, you know. And it's interesting that this fills this need for companionship for a lot of young people.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's so and it's beautiful, but it's also like kind of strange because it's the first time over the last, I don't know, 100 years or so, really, in media. When would you think was the first example of like a company or a franchise that made creatures for people to kind of adopt, like Chia Pets or?
Oh well, I mean, I think there's a
not real life pets though. They've got to be like.
No, I think Chia Pets count as something like that. I think you can go far back as long as human beings have been making art. Like I've seen sculptures of either fictional creatures or animals, you know, that are thousands of years old, and having that object that kind of captures the spirit of an animal. It's like a totem, you know. There's a spiritual connection being made there. I think it's. I don't think this is a recent thing. I think it's just a modern expression of something that human beings have sought out through their art as long as we've been making art.
So, who was your first digital or otherwise friend that you did you make it yourself? Was this something in a game?
First digital, it would have. I say it would have been a piece of media. I'm trying to think, like, what's a really early example?
Those NFT friends.
Not that. I'm not that young, unfortunately. Let me think. I know what it was. Very early one. There was a game in the 1990s called Creatures.
Okay.
And it had these little, I still like, maybe if I went back to it now, it would have dated. I don't know. But for the time, it was incredible what they managed to do. They had these little things called Norns. And they're sort of like these sort of elf-looking things with big eyes and pointy ears. And in the world, you are a hand. And you can go, there's a whole world, and you can move through the world, but only so far. You need the Norn to walk in order to get through the world. And you pick an egg, you hatch it, and then at first it speaks gibberish, and you can teach it English, you can teach it commands, you can breed Norns with other Norns, and they have an entire genetics system in place. So if you mix them, then the offspring will be like a connection with actual genetic like compilations. There was a modding scene, so you had people making like mermaid Norns that were able to move through water, and if they were out of water, they'd die. So then you could breed them with normal Norns, and then they'd be amphibious. And I got obsessed with that. I think the first time I used a digital program, which was Paint Shop Pro, was to make artwork and go over sprite artwork of Norns to sort of like imagine what mine would look like. I wasn't able to code when I was little, otherwise I would have totally been like making my own. But that was a massive obsession for me when I was younger. Like that really triggered something for me. I found it really great.
But why did you need that? The Norns or the imaginary friend? I remember I had like a legit imaginary friend.
Oh, right.
Right. Like, his name was Devin.
Right.
And he left to go to college, coincidentally, right around the same time that the Steve from Blue's Clues left to go to college.
Oh.
I don't know why. It just happened at the same time. And I don't know. Were you an introvert? Were you shy?
Yeah. No, I was very much leave me alone.
Right.
That's the type of child that I was. I wanted to be left alone.
Not much has changed.
I don't know. I think I like people more than I used to.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd very much want to do my own thing, and much preferred the company of animals over people. I think when I was younger, which I think I love people, but I do really, really enjoy connecting with animals still. But yeah, I didn't have an imaginary friend. I think Norns were a really early kind of like obsession with an imaginary creature that I can remember. like a real hyperfixation. But I'd also hyperfixate over animals in general. Like the earliest hyperfixation I can remember is frogs, and just thinking frogs were the coolest thing ever. And anything with a frog on it, I wanted it. And then it was dinosaurs, and then it was reptiles, and now it's just kind of kept it since kind of thing.
Maybe you're also a creature yourself.
Maybe I am.
You were when you were born, you were like a mollywog for a while, and you graduated up to whatever form.
It's just a skin suit. I'm actually a reptoid.
That would be pretty cool. Can you do the thing where you blink sideways and everything? Can you lick your eyelid?
No, I can't do that. Maybe I'm not a reptoid after all.
So you somehow managed to turn this into a career.
Yeah.
All that weird obsession. There are so many great examples. We talked the first time that we met in Cologne about Boris Karloff and all these people, H.R. Giger, who designed incredible monsters throughout time, history. I'm obsessed with Star Trek, so I could go on down that route for a long time. But Star Wars, or at least The Mandalorian, was one of the examples in your lecture too. It's so cool how there are all of these examples of people who have these strange, weird-esque, and I'm sitting in a video game company, like you have just this weird fixation and it becomes a reality. Yeah. But even still, it's incredibly daunting, I think, for young people to pursue their interests. Yeah, for sure. I remember you had some big, long spiel about that at one point.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. It was like one of my earliest impressions of you was like, man, she's really feels passionate about this whole inspiring young people to follow their dreams and all that kind of stuff.
I really do, yeah. Like I remember, I mean, I wasn't ever like super hardcore discouraged, and that didn't affect me, but I did experience a little bit of sort of like friction and had to sort of fight against it a lot, which, you know, I have will of steel, so I get through that, but it was exhausting and unnecessary kind of thing. Like I remember specifically in high school once I was drawing trolls and somebody saying girls aren't supposed to draw stuff like that, and just being like, fuck you. But also when I came into the games industry initially, I started studying at the HKU in 2010. And at the time, stylized artists in the games industry were not super a thing. It was more expected going into the industry that you work digitally, you work in a very polished way, and you do a lot of high fantasy or realistic, gritty sort of war and things like that. And actually, initially, when I decided I'm going to pivot into art, I thought maybe games wasn't a good place for me because I worked traditionally. I like working in very loose, crazy styles and working very stylized and experimental. But I played Psychonauts in 2005, and I really, really loved that game a lot. And you can unlock concept art in it. So I would go around and do that, and I would just look at Scott C's concept art. And I thought, oh, like, is there a place for me in the games industry? I thought, well, if Scott C can make a career in the games industry, then so can I. And that gave me courage to go for it. I'm very happy that I got to tell him this. And he's just the sweetest guy. He's the kind of guy who says gee whiz unironically. He's just so adorable and positive and sweet. But yeah, going into college and studying game art, there was pushback from well-intended people who were concerned that I'd have trouble finding a career, who would say, in order to get a job, you need to do more work more like this. And I mean, they're probably right. If I did realistic fantasy stuff, I'd probably have an easier job working in the games industry, but it wouldn't be me, you know, I'd be faking. And that you can't keep up a life like that. But also the students were also, like, people would get angry that I wanted to make games, like actually get angry at the idea of me working in games, which I don't really understand. I guess they just don't like things that are different or something. I don't know. But yeah, the idea, it was very confronting for whatever reason. The idea that they had this idea of what they're supposed to be, and then there's somebody who's not that. So they just kind of lash out at it. So I got a lot of that, which was not very nice. They shouldn't have done that. And yeah, I don't, and if there's other people who are starting out that are experiencing that kind of pushback, it's like, it's so unnecessary. Like, try to nourish people being themselves, because everybody's got their own creative voice and their own perspective and their own things that they find important to say through their work, and they should be encouraged to do that because nobody else is going to do it.
So you and I and old CC Hyper, that bastard who keeps killing me every time I go on stage or anything in public. But we were talking about how back in the day, right? Back in, let's say, from 1999 back, the entire business of professional wrestling was under what we call kayfabe, which is this old carny term, but it's essentially like pretending something is real even though it's not, and never, ever, ever admitting it to the crowd. And so you would have this sort of system in place that if people wanted to be involved in that business, they'd either have to be grandfathered in or, know somebody, it's a family thing, or they'd have to be kind of broken in. So the tradition was you show up, I want to be a wrestler, okay, and then they have someone kick the shit out of you, send you on your way, take your money, and then, but they don't tell you, oh, by the way, it's all fake. And then over the years, that has really changed. And here in Denmark, especially when I first started working with, I'm a junior referee over at Body Slam in my part-time. But they have this completely different way of looking at things, where they're like, they don't even charge you money to train. They're just like, wrestling is hard enough. Like, the last thing that you want to do is discourage someone who wants to do it. Just give them the chance to figure out if they're any good at it, and then it'll come over time. And now in this world where like everyone obviously knows like it's a work, it's a show. I don't know. There's something. There's a whole nother rich layer of storytelling once the audience does know that the fourth wall exists. And to kind of tie that back into this whole monsters and creatures thing, when does a monster become terrifying? And even though it's not there, why does that invoke such a response in people?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think. I mean, I guess I guess it would be that it triggers it triggers a concern in somebody. I don't know how else to put it.
It's like when David Copperfield, makes an elephant disappear and he didn't do it. But there's that moment, the suspension of disbelief that happens.
I mean, there's different things that people fear. Like they can fear the unknown. They can fear aggression. They can fear like the threat of aggression and not knowing where it's coming from, or their own grief, or there's all sorts of different types of fear. So I guess a creature would then trigger a similar emotional reaction in an audience. How does it go about that? I mean, so many ways. I mean, there's lots of examples of scary creatures in media. I think I watched so many horror movies growing up, and horror movies I probably shouldn't have watched as well.
What's the one that fucked you up the most?
The Thing, and I saw it when I was in my 20s. Before that, I had never been scared by a horror movie, ever. And part of that, I think, is also because I have artist parents, and I was very interested, and particularly my dad was also interested in how movies were made. So I always understood that movies were not real. And I would be told things like, look, the blood here is with a squib, and that's like a bag that it explodes, so it looks like blood, and things like that. With the exception of psychologically horrifying scenes in films. Like I remember watching things like RoboCop and things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff like that. But the table scene would always get skipped, and the opening scene where the guy gets shot would get skipped. And I think that was quite interesting of my parents to do that, because they knew what my limits were and what I was able to separate as this isn't reality. Mm-hmm. But anything that was psychological, they understood and very well that would be confusing for a child and would be scary. So The Thing being the first movie that scared me, I guess it was sort of like the image was really horrible, and the like chest scene, the one where he's trying to bring him back to life, and then the chest opens up and then eats the guy's arms. Maybe it was because it surprised me so much, and just the idea of that happening to you is really horrible. But yeah, like I was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I'm like 6, nothing. But like the Thing at like 20 made me feel scared.
The Thing has like, I mean, it's like the second best metamorphosis scene probably, I think, in any movie. For me, American Werewolf in London, that's number one.
That's a good one.
I mean, that shit's fucking crazy. It's all practical. Yeah, it's just there's something so weird about this fascination that we have with these things that we know aren't real, but for whatever reason they like hack into our brain chemistry in a way, and you dial it in to be just the right amount of exhilarating, but not actually causing you to piss your pants, hopefully.
The thing is, though, that sometimes things that aren't meant to be scary...
The thing about The Thing is...
Oh. Sometimes things that aren't scary also trigger a fear response. So it's a very personal thing. It's also, you know, like some kids would watch a horror movie and have nightmares forever, and another one wouldn't. But a really early thing... non-horror stuff scared me more. I can remember examples of that more. Like... when I was like 5, Thomas the Tank Engine.
Ooh, okay.
I would run out of the room when it was the ending because the credits would roll, and then right when it showed the last credit, his eyes would move, and that really freaked me out for some reason. I'd have to leave the room because I didn't want to see it.
I was like mortally terrified of Alf.
Right.
Right. Because he ate cats. And to me, like, who would eat a cat? What a fucking... I hated him. I mean, I was sitting in a restaurant and like a television in the corner came on with Alf and I had to leave. I was probably like 8 years old, like too old to be crying like a baby over a puppet on TV, but still. There's something about that particular thing, and he's designed to be liked and lovable, and yet for whatever reason I had this crazy aversion to him. So it also affects people in different ways. To go back to Neopets and Digimans and Pokemon. Let's just stick to the original 150 because at least then I can participate in the conversation. Mm-hmm. What's like the best Pokemon and what's the worst Pokemon? And why? Like as a creature designer. And I don't mean like in your deck. I don't mean like
as a creature designer.
Right.
You're making me put my creature design hat on. Okay.
What do you think this is, lady?
I mean, I guess it would have to be Pikachu since they chose it as the mascot and has the most broad appeal.
That's exactly why I asked.
I mean, I guess it would have to be. I mean, because I need to take my personal opinion out of it because I think Mewtwo's the coolest Pokemon personally from the original 151.
The most human of them.
He's cool. He looks cool and he's psychic, and psychic was my favorite type. But I'd need to trust Pokemon's team that they chose Pikachu for a reason. They were going to make Clefairy the mascot at first because of the kawaii appeal, but then they thought that it would sort of be coded to female for Western audiences, so they went with something that was appealing to both boys and girls and went for Pikachu in the end. So I guess that's, you know, like the bright colors and the attitude of the character and things like that is very appealing to young children, you know, like energetic and cute and like a fun friend and stuff like that.
So as a marketing person, right? Mm-hmm. I do think about, is this because Pikachu is the right one for the brand, or did they just pick one and roll with it?
No, they were very careful.
I wonder though, but tell me your side of the story.
Well, from the research that I've done, they were picking something that had the most kind of broad appeal, and Clefairy was originally the choice. And then when they looked into Western tastes, then they chose Pikachu. Another reason is because you can catch it quite early in the game. That was also a factor that influenced that decision. Yeah, I mean, the Pokemon is the biggest media franchise in the world ever, so they must be doing something right. I think the creative choices that they made, you can learn a lot from them by looking at what they did. Right. Worst design though, out of the original ones, I mean, Seal's pretty stupid, but like, it would need to be like from a creature design hat. I guess it would be, is there a Pokemon from the original set that doesn't feel like it's typing? I'm trying to think about that. Is there one like that? Because then that's not good, because then it's not communicating its sort of like core idea well enough. Was there one in the originals that felt like this should be a different type? Why is it this type?
Well, I'm referencing like my brain reference for Pokemon is like the selection menu from Pokemon Stadium on 64. So somewhere around the like almost to the end section before you get to the legendary types, or I guess somewhat there's like Aerodactyl and the Kabuto or whatever the fuck it's called, and it just feels like they started running out of shit. Like it feels like, oh, I don't know, what are we gonna do? What does this one do? He shoots fucking Triforce shit out of his face. Call him Porygon. He's a duck, and he's made of crystals. I don't know. But whereas in the beginning, it seems a bit more meticulous, right?
Well, yeah.
Early on in the list, it's like, we got our fire type or plant type or whatever the hell, and they're all sort of clearly, even in the show, early on when Ash breaks out the Pokedex and he scans a Pokemon, it would say like Pikachu, a mouse type Pokemon, but it doesn't say, when you hit Diglett, it doesn't say a mole type Pokemon. So it becomes more and more abstract kind of as they go. I don't know what order they designed them in.
No, they designed them very much out of order, and I'm going to have to cheat because I'm ashamed that I don't know her name off the top of my head.
Hey, Nando, hit us with a couple of those fat cervezas. Garçon! Yes.
Thank you.
Wait, you're over there. You're not even dead.
So the process, firstly, there were designs in gold and silver that were meant to be in red and blue that didn't work, like baby Pokemon they wanted to do initially. And but the designs were done totally out of order because Ken Sugimori was first designing Pokemon, and he was basing it a lot on particularly kaiju, like Rhyhorn, Rhydon, look very Godzilla-like and stuff like that. But there were limits to kind of like how far he could push the designs, and they felt like they were all getting a little bit too kind of like samey and a little bit too kind of boyish and stuff like that. So they brought an artist in who is named Atsuko Nishida, and she designed Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, and a lot of other very iconic Pokemon. That's a super interesting thing that they started with the end evolutions of the starters, and then she designed the starters, and then they figured it out from there. So things were totally designed out of order, and they designed with in mind, we want to have a potential friend for all sorts of different types of kids, because we want everybody to be able to enjoy this and make friends through this game that we've made.
To make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very easy to be cynical about Pokemon, but I am happy that at least the biggest media franchise that's ever existed came from a place where they wanted to make a game that connects people together. At least the core of that entire IP is something positive.
Oh yeah.
That's quite heartening that there is money to be made about something that ultimately has a good kind of message. I think that is nice. But I mean, yeah, it is a big money maker as well, so.
And it's interesting how I think Nintendo has always been, less so in the last maybe 5 or 6 years really, but like prior to that and still to a certain degree, they've always been about bringing people as a group together or improving your life quality in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do like yoga on the Wii Fit back in the good times. That was fun. Or playing, like the party game tradition. It's just something that others have tried and in some cases been somewhat successful, but there's just nothing like getting a group of 7-year-olds over for a sleepover, getting hopped up on some soda pop, smashing some potato chips and some pizza, and then playing Mario Party all night or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Mario Kart or Crash Team Racing if we want to get out of Nintendo.
Yeah.
But there's always that agenda of getting people up and moving and together.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. And this is a little bit of a tangent from Creatures, but
Tangents are fine, by the way.
Excellent.
We got all day.
Oh, good. Okay, because
We got until Chad Norris' girlfriend says he hasn't come home.
But I've gotten really fascinated with games that inspire you to be a better person in real life in recent years. I've realized that a lot of the games that I'm playing do that, like...
Vampire the Masquerade.
Things like Ring Fit Adventure. Do you know that game for the Switch?
Nope.
It's an RPG with an exercise ring where like you physically run through the world, and then your moves are like exercise moves like squats or yoga positions and things like that. It's a game to encourage exercise because I think going to the gym is boring.
Really?
And this game makes it really, really fun. And you know, like you're fighting enemies and there's like a super Giga Chad dragon that you're trying to defeat and stuff like that. I like that game a lot.
Speaking of exercise and dragons, you were telling me how you did some form of kung fu that involved wearing. Okay, well, tell me.
Yeah, I do. I haven't done it for very long, but I do lion dance. Which I started doing it because I grew up near Zeedijk in Chinatown in Amsterdam. So I'd see like Chinese celebrations just because it was happening in my neighborhood. So that got me familiar with lion dancing, which happens at Chinese New Year.
Lion dancing or lion?
Lion, as a lion.
Lion dancing, I'm familiar with.
Yeah, people think I say line dance when I say that I do this.
Are you sure you're not from Alabama?
I'm doubting it more and more. But what was I saying? Yeah, so I started out. I'd go when the lion dance was happening to draw the dancers, kind of like when I go to the zoo to draw, but then drawing like these creatures.
I believe you.
It's a very me thing to do.
I got those cool pictures of like the genius at work, and you're like fucking staring at a tiger for like an uncomfortable. If that tiger was a person, he would have been like, "Bro, stop looking at me. What is your deal?"
Yeah, resting art face. So I started with that, and then eventually I got into contact with Le Coq Moon Kung Fu School in Amsterdam. I found out via that these were the people who were doing the lion dance, and the Sifu there told me that you can do lion dance classes. We do them, but I highly recommend you also do kung fu lessons as well. And the reason for that is that kung fu practicing publicly, if you're not familiar with sort of like the methods behind it and everything, it's kind of not interesting for general audiences to watch. So lion dance was developed as a kind of subsect of kung fu. The moves that you're doing when you're in the costume and the strength necessary to do that and the teamwork necessary and everything is all sort of like connected to kung fu, but then it's applied in a way that's really entertaining for general audiences to watch. And it also means that the kung fu school has something that they can do every year and get money for. Because traditionally businesses hang a cabbage outside of their place of business. So that means that the lion comes, he goes through the restaurant and like scares everybody and stuff, and then it bows in front of the business and blesses it, and then it jumps up, which is like the guy getting on the shoulders, and eats the cabbage, and inside of it is a red envelope full of money, which is like payment for doing the lion dance in front of the business and like drawing attention to it. So it's funny that it's like this like ancient tradition that's actually based on sort of entertaining people and. And it's great fun. I'm not nearly as good as I would like to be, but I hope to get better. And my Sifu Manlung is a very, very good teacher, a very friendly and welcoming person. I'm enjoying learning from him a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, from this lion dancing, do you feel like you could kick my ass in a fist fight?
Oh, I don't know about that.
I'm just wondering because it was so interesting because you first showed it to me. I'm like, okay, I think I've seen some form of this at least before. But when you described it as a martial art, I had never even considered. I was like, oh yeah, of course this is. Yeah. Of course it is. But is it practical? Do you?
Oh yeah.
Do you spar? Do you?
You don't spar necessarily. I think the biggest thing. Well, firstly, I haven't been doing it for very long, and you've been in the military, so I'm pretty sure you could kill me if you wanted to.
No.
Nah. Okay. Because you can't, or because you don't want to.
Next question.
Okay. But crap. What was I talking about? Lost my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about
the practicality. Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason why I did it is because I like having something to do to work out because I feel good when I'm in shape. Makes me feel good about myself. I'm also
really.
Oh yeah. I'm also a little bit kind of uncoordinated as well, like I'm a bit clumsy and stuff like that. And I felt like doing some kind of dance would be good for that. So I'm more kind of in touch with my body and things like that. And also it's pretending to be a monster. Like that's the most me way to work out there could possibly ever be. It's like puppetry, but then you're like the armature of the puppet. Like your body becomes its neck, and you have to like behave like it and think like it and walk like it and stuff. And it's very good for educating me as an animator as well.
No, it does make a lot of sense because you're sort of creating the illusion of. I mean, in real life, right? Like you're all doing the lion dance, and you've got the thing on, and you're creating with syncopated people the illusion of a creature's body moving and all that sort of thing. So I bet that would be very informative to be on like the inside as a moving part, and as if you were part of the creature's skeleton or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that I enjoy about it is it helps me a lot with like, I don't like watching recordings of myself or listening to recordings of myself. Like I'm not going to listen back to this podcast, for example, because I just can't.
Really?
And that means that, so I find it difficult to kind of like perceive how I'm coming across as well. And when you're line dancing, you have to because it's you're in that moment, you've got like 10 kilos of like a head in a sweaty costume that you're holding up with your arms, with your legs bent, pulling the string to make the ears flap and the eyes blink, and opening and closing the mouth. And you're a neck and forelimbs in that moment. And you need to look at recordings of yourself, and you need to project outwards to the audience in order to perform well and to have good energy and see what works and things like that.
Same with wrestling.
Right.
Right. You're very, I mean, the sport has virtually nothing to do with the wrestling itself. It's about the crowd. The sport is, can you entertain this crowd?
Right.
With these tools? These are the limitations.
It's very like that indeed. So I think that's also something that I like about it is that it's really forcing me in a way that's I'm kind of comfortable with to sort of project outwards and kind of think about how I'm being perceived, which is something that I'm trying to work on more and more.
Yeah. I think that's something that I like had to force myself to get over, because when I first started podcasting, I mean, I was doing everything. Like I was doing all my own editing and distribution, and therefore I would have to listen to hours and hours and hours of my own fucking voice. And I got desensitized to it after a while, and I really thought it was actually a good practice. And I'm sure that there will be things in this one that I look back at and I say like, oh, I wish I had done this differently or asked that question. But forcing oneself into that sort of self-analytical, uncomfortable space often yields results, I would say. So, for instance, like I say like a lot, and I noticed that, and I can't unhear like, and now the people listening won't be able to unhear it as well. And when I first heard that, it bothered the shit out of me. And then over time, I kind of grew more comfortable with it. I'm like, this is just sort of how I speak. But you know, like Robert De Niro, like he never watches his own films. That's insane. I can't imagine. You seriously never, do you look back at your old work? Or is it just your own voice that you have?
Yeah, I wonder about that as well. I mean, people who don't perceive themselves at all, maybe. Like, I remember after I co-developed a mobile game called Crap, I'm Broke, I just couldn't look at the game for a year. I mean, for one thing, I was absolutely sick of looking at it because of testing it and all that kind of thing. And all I could see was the things that we weren't able to do and stuff like that. But after a year, only at that point, I was actually able to play it and kind of experience it as close to a player as I probably could, and kind of appreciate what we'd managed to pull off with that game. So maybe it's like that as well for people like that, where maybe in time, if they look back at older stuff, they can look back on it, who knows, when it's sort of less raw or something.
Even with Kung Fu, if you were to go back and see yourself from the outside performing, then you can make corrections and you can steer yourself.
Definitely, yeah.
But you just don't.
Oh, in lion dance, I do. Okay. I record myself basically every lesson. And the Sifu will also, if I have the camera rolling, will also do it so I can compare as well. And I mean, yeah, he's like third generation Kung Fu teacher. So I mean, I'm never going to be as good as him because this is his life kind of thing.
You might.
I'm not going to do. It's his life, like for 3 generations. You know, like.
I've seen enough fights between people who want, I've dedicated my entire life to this particular way, and then, it doesn't actually, at the end of the day, it's like, well, karate is better than taekwondo or whatever,
Right.
So,
well, he's very, very good. Also, he's very, very strong. Yeah. Like that's the main thing that when I perform, I wish I could move faster and more like energetic and stuff, but you got to be so strong to be able to like whip this thing around super quick, right, and like jump up and down and all this stuff because it's heavy and you have to like hold it with your 2 arms, and also your legs are constantly bent when you're doing it as well, so you have to have a lot of lower body strength and like low center of gravity and stuff. But I've got pretty strong legs, so that's already, and I'm pretty like sturdily built, so I have an advantage at least with that. Like I have the right build for doing it, but I absolutely need to do it more and get stronger and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, the Dutch are known for kickboxing, right? Like some of the best kickboxers in the world come out of.
Oh, are they? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like I don't know why. I think it's availability of training. That's obviously a huge part of it, but also like being tall.
Yeah, I was going to say long legs.
Right, like
kick you.
For sure, it makes a huge difference. And so I mean, I can think of several great wrestlers also who came out of the Netherlands, like Malachi Black comes to mind. But is there like a strong culture there you feel in martial arts?
I mean, it's relatively new to me. There are several kung fu schools. And there's clearly a community. I mean, and it's a very lovely community as well. Like really like fun people who like. It's interesting where it's sort of like people who are very, very disciplined and dedicated, but also really laid back and making jokes and stuff like that. Like there was an odd moment I had where backstage waiting for the cue to perform publicly, there were these 2 teenage boys who a lot of the students have just like their parents are black belts and they've practiced it their entire lives, and then there's me at like 31 like coming in like, hello, I'm starting doing this now. But there were these 2 teenage boys, and you know how teenage boys will just kind of randomly start fighting each other. It's just kind of a thing that they do. Like they start sort of like roughhousing randomly. It's like
a bit of rough and tumble, mate.
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny because they started doing that, but they're also kung fu experts. So one of them like tried to kung fu kick the other one in the dick, and he like dodged it. So I thought that was really funny. Where like they're really, really good at this sport, but they're also still just little boys acting like little boys. I thought that was very, very amusing.
Let's tie this somehow back into monsters and creatures and stuff. Actually, Nando, will you run to Mr. Schreiber's desk and grab the book off the top of it? Thank you. We'll get to that.
Alrighty.
But you're doing, I think, a really excellent job, but I feel like this is more recent for you of like kind of self-promoting the idea of being a creature consultant.
Yeah, this is new.
So when you consult a creature, like what do you say to it? What do you...
When I sit it on the sofa and ask what its problems are.
Yeah, psychoanalyzing. Thank you, Nando. Look that shit up. So yeah, we'll get to that in a bit.
All right. Well, I mean, with creature consultancy and looking at creature designs that people do, I mean, sometimes it can involve actually drawing and coming up with concepts and tapping into my kind of mental library of animal knowledge and making something that fits. Sometimes it's looking at something that already exists and seeing how it could be improved. And my philosophy about creature design is that creatures are vessels for meaning that are meant to communicate something. And usually it's a core theme that a piece of work is trying to express. It can also manifest in different ways, like it's meant to communicate a specific game mechanic or a specific way of interacting with a creature in the case of a game. Like, just from the looks and the behavior, for example, it may need to be clear that this is a creature that is very dangerous at mid-range but has no long-range capabilities. And there's things that you can put into the design and the behavior and the fictional biology even of a creature that communicates that. But really, the most important thing is that there's getting down to what is the creative problem that this creature is intended to solve. And is it doing that in the best way that it could?
It's one of the things I really appreciated about your lecture yesterday was the insistence on, like, it's not about the creature itself, it's about the story you're trying to tell. And whether it's a set piece or a character or whatever, like that all matters, and that should be where you come from. And I very much resonate with that. I think that that's something that people in all different mediums could kind of take a look at and see, like, am I obsessing over the wrong thing, or am I putting all my eggs in the wrong basket?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also, if you have a point to what it is that you're making, if you have a core theme and a thing that you're trying to communicate, that's a proverbial hook that you can hang your hat on.
Right.
And because when do you know if I draw this and I draw that, which one's better? You need just taste. You can't just go by taste. Like, I have terrible taste. I can't go by that. So there needs to be criteria for when is this successful. And the only way you can do that is by what is this trying to fulfill? What is the creative problem? And when you define that, then you have a criteria by which you can measure the different potential solutions when you're concept sketching and refining and things like that.
Let's go to the book here. So
all right.
You're still, I don't know when we're actually going to air this, but you're still kickstarting this.
Yeah. So
do you want to hold it up?
Sure. So this is Monsters from A to Z, and it's a book of sketches that I did while I was in Tokyo, and they are blind contour drawings of monsters from all over the world. And these drawings were done without looking at the paper. I just, on the trains in Tokyo, I would think very hard about the monster and then draw it, look at what I had, and then tie it together using markers. And then this is a collection of the drawings with the name of the monster, the country it comes from, little description, and a quote. And currently this is on pre-registration on Kickstarter. And if I'm able to find enough interest, then I want to do a crowdfunding campaign to publish this and turn it into a real book.
And this copy you've donated to
3D
Realms.
Yes, I have.
So I wanted to talk about the Chupacabra. I had no idea that Chupacabras were Puerto Rican.
Indeed, yeah. I didn't know that either until I was researching the book.
So as you say you drew them all blindly, right?
Yes.
You're not looking at them. Did you already, you obviously had some reference to, like, what they look like.
Yeah, I tapped into my own mental
research.
Library, okay. Yeah.
And it was just to go through the entire alphabet?
Yeah, I did a couple for fun and then decided, I'll do one for each letter of the alphabet. So I thought I wrote a list of...
Here we have, Mr. Tumnus.
The fawn, yeah.
Yeah. But the Chupacabra, when I was a kid, my brother and I mean, we didn't grow up very far. Well, we were close enough to Mexico to believe that we could find a Chupacabra if we really weren't looking. You know, it's not that close, but I had no idea that they originated in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, from what I understood from the research, and I will say that I'm sure that there's things, just because I'm not from certain cultures, and I made an effort to do as broad a variety of cultures as possible. So there may be things that are incorrect, and I'm happy to hear this. But from what I understood from the research that I did was that there was a movie that came out in Puerto Rico, and the monster in it looked a lot like a Chupacabra, and then coincidentally people started seeing them. Kind of like how in the 1950s in the States, there were movies that came out about aliens, and then when people would be attacked by aliens, they would look exactly like the monsters in those movies that had come out, and you can track it. Funny coincidence. So Chupacabra seems to be a similar kind of case.
Chupacabras are interesting because, okay, to get away from, like, what monsters look like, all that sort of thing, like the thing that makes them sinister or whatever is always interesting. Mm-hmm. Like blood, blood sucking. For some reason, people, like human beings, we just don't like shit that sucks blood. Like it's just off. Why is that so off-putting to us?
It's our life source. It's the thing. It's something that we need to live, being being taken away from us. And there's other ones as well, like they go by other names, but there's Ekex in this, which is from the Philippines. These sort of vampiric bird people, and they eat embryos out of pregnant women. It's also a very nasty idea.
Yeah, there's so many things that are vampiric.
Yeah. And Chinese hopping vampires who suck chi out of people as well. It's also a thing.
Spirit vampires.
Yeah.
That's something interesting that I read this book called The Empath's Survival Guide. And it talked a lot about, and I've heard this phrase used elsewhere, so it's not just, I forget the author's name, it's not just her, but this idea of energy vampires. And this is someone you could meet in this room right now, like somebody who just sucks the fun out of the room or whatever. Some particular not fun person, that kind of thing. But that concept of someone else draining or something else draining life force is very pervasive throughout human experience and fiction and folklore.
I guess it's kind of connected to like the taking away of bodily autonomy, which I think is one of the reasons why The Thing is so awful, where it looks like you and it was you, but it isn't anymore. It's like really irritating. Like there's something really frightening, but also annoying about like, that's me, you bastard.
One of the interesting things about what makes The Thing in The Thing, I'm trying. One of the interesting things about it is the fact that it's what makes it scary is that it changes.
Yeah.
People don't like change. That's the whole fucking thing about it. It's virtually.
That's an interesting, like, but it's change against your will.
Right.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes an unexpected hindrance to their plans.
That's what that's connected to,
Right.
for
So
sure.
you have this thing that looks like you and acts like you, and then suddenly it's something. I mean, does it piss you off like an ex-girlfriend? It's like, what happened? What changed?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, like a kind of like relatable sort of like psychology behind a creature, be it a scary one or a not scary one, that has a lot of real world parallels. I think that's a good one. Like Pokemon, for example, like it's all about friendship, and the Pokemon is loyal to its trainer.
Drink every time we say Pokemon.
And the Pokemon's fighting for its trainer, and that's like it's doing everything it can because it doesn't want to let its trainer down. And there's nothing more relatable than that, not wanting to let the people you love down. So it's simple, like you understand where they're coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like the gill man, like stealing the girl because he just wants to be loved. Like, who doesn't want to just be loved?
Pepe Le Pew.
It's relatable. He's going about it the wrong way, much like the gill man. But that's you understand where they're coming from, and maybe that's also the thing with horror as well. Like it's sort of you have to have a lot of real world parallels for the thing that makes it scary. And then it's sort of like a general idea that is not pleasant, and then people are able to, maybe they have an experience that's connected to it, and then they think of that, and then that's what makes them feel upset because they have this automatic emotional reaction to it. Maybe that's the key.
So Pepe's going around it the wrong way, as you say.
Yes.
What's the right way? if not doing going the Pepe Le Pew route.
I don't know. Contribute constructively to a relationship. I don't know.
He was a weird. That is the American stereotype of French people, unfortunately.
Do you know I heard in France, Pepe Le Pew is Italian.
No fucking way. Look that. Is that true? Fact check. No fucking way. That's too good to be true. Ouroboros. This is a good one.
Yeah, the snake eating its own tail. A lot of parallels in life to that as well.
Why do you say that?
Infinite cycles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of infinite cycles, life and death and repetitive days and months and years and self-destruction connections as well, where it's eating itself as well, where and frivolity like getting stuck in making the same mistakes over and over again. There's a lot of parallels.
The myth of Sisyphus.
Yeah.
You ever read Camus?
I have not.
I mean, actually, it's probably good. I like Camus, but Camus is like literature for depressed people. So if you haven't had to read The Myth of Sisyphus, you're probably doing pretty well.
All right. I am aware of the myth.
Right. Well, the book itself is an essay. It's not him telling the story of Sisyphus. It's like the futility of suicide and self-destruction.
Right.
Kind of writ large by this, French Algerian philosopher in the middle of the 20th century kind of thing. It's I don't know. It's a very good book, or at least a collection actually of several different essays.
All right.
But yeah, the cycle of it all and the way that we sort of self-perpetuate into different repeating problems, but the solution to the problem is the hair of the dog that bit you. Well, damn, now I got to go back in there and slay that dragon again, sort of thing. Do you think that you could, like on the spot, come up with another 27 monsters A to Z that aren't these?
Oh, probably. I mean, certain letters are a little bit difficult.
Well, let's start with something easy like J.
J. Jabberwocky.
The Jabberwocky.
Yeah.
This is from the Looking Glass.
Through the Looking Glass, indeed. It was Brillig and the I don't remember. I used to be able to quote it. Which was Brillig and the Riley Toves the Jar and Gimble in the Wabe. I used to be able to quote the whole thing once upon a time. Yeah, Jabberwocky's weird. It's got a weird face. It looks like a really, really angry shaved rabbit or something in a jacket.
I just remember the dancing troupe, the Jabberwockies. They all wore the blank white masks.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, let's say another letter. Q.
I guess Quetzalcoatl. That's a thing, though. When I was doing this, I didn't want to use
Quetzalcoatl is like
the feathered serpent from the Aztecs.
Mm-hmm.
I purposely, though, when I made this, I didn't want to use gods, even gods from religions that aren't practiced anymore. It just kind of felt like, I don't know, like, am I going to put Jesus in? Like, it's like, funny creature. Like,
it's not a monster.
Or is he? Dun, dun, dun.
Bad, Molly.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Depends on your perspective, but I intentionally didn't want to include gods from existing religions as monsters. I thought that was a bit odd, but yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind.
What's the best Greek monster?
Best Greek monster? You mean my favorite?
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, there's so many.
Because mythology designs the best creatures.
I really have a soft spot for minotaurs. I don't know why. I just think they're neat. I think it's cool.
Why?
I'm not sure. They're just cool. I have no explanation for that. The myth is interesting, and they live in the labyrinth, and it's dark and spooky, and it's like human but not. I've always had a soft spot for them. There's better ones that I think are cool, like hydras are really cool, and the concept of that we're cutting off the head and then two appear. And the cleverness of trying to put wax in the stump so it doesn't grow back. And also anything that's in a Harryhausen movie as well, like Medusa and Cyclops. I love the Cyclops in Harryhausen. It's super cool design. But yeah, for whatever reason, the sort of half human, half animal aspect of the Minotaur, I thought that was really cool and interesting.
Same with the fawn. We talked about fawn. I thought it was an interesting one. Where the book is literally called Monsters, and you included angels, you included fawns, things that I wouldn't have thought of at all in terms of like this is a monster, but it could be.
Yeah, I tried to vary it and keep it interesting.
So we talked about the definition of the word creature, but what about the word monster? What does that mean?
That's an interesting one. I've thought about that myself as well. I think monsters are connected to fear responses, while creatures not necessarily. I think monsters are used in art history to represent fears of humanity, while creatures don't necessarily have to be frightening. They can be like an alien being from a planet in a video game or something, and are just completely benign.
Something preferably more like modern, maybe the last 20, 30 years. Can you give an example of a monster in a film that sort of captures that idea?
Of a creature or a monster?
Well, okay, so you said that the monsters are specifically designed for like the fear response, right? Can you give an example?
Jean Jacket from Nope.
Nope. What's
Oh God!
What that
Nobody watched that movie.
Did you see that? Nope.
Yeah, that one. And it's like, who's on first? Nope is a sci-fi movie that completely reimagines the idea of an alien. It's really cool. There's spoilers. If you haven't seen Nope, please watch it. I'm going to ruin it for you now, though. Please watch it. And assuming you have watched it, which you probably haven't.
Pokemon.
It does this really, so then they pass out from drinking so much. It does this interesting thing where it's set in the desert and things are going missing and stuff like that, and they're seeing a shape in the sky. And then it turns out that the alien is the UFO. So it looks like a UFO, but then it sort of folds out. And then it's sort of like a deep sea creature that's able to fold in and look like a UFO and then fold out. It's like this big weird jellyfish angel thing in the sky.
They did that also in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Did they?
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's this episode where like one of them is in pain because her mate is off drifting in space somewhere. But very
right. And I need to check that out then. I really need to explore Next Generation more. I haven't done it nearly as much as I should.
I will marathon the whole thing with you.
All right.
For sure.
Awesome.
Anytime.
And they did some cool things with this creature, like they thought a lot about tropes involving people who have spotted UFOs, like why are the pictures always blurry? This creature has a sort of like, it affects electronics so that they don't work properly. So the way they end up filming it at the end is with a non-digital camera, so like filming it in the sky, and it sucks things up just like UFOs, but that's it eating them. I get really freaked out by people being eaten alive in media. That really, really fucks with me. And big eyes as well freak me out. And there's this awful scene where this like whole group...
But you hung out with tigers for like 30 minutes.
They were freaking me out, I must say, the way they were, the mad look in their eyes. But yeah, there's this horrible scene that really like got under my skin where there's a whole crowd of people that it sucks up and it like shows them inside of the monster and they're all screaming. You like hear them screaming as it's flying through the air. Oh, it's horrible, horrible. That's another movie that scared me. Like sometimes I just think about it, I'm like, oh, I want to think about something else. Awful. That did a really, that affected me because it's tapping into something I personally find very freaky. But it was also doing something that at least I hadn't seen done before with the trope of the UFO. I thought that was really, really cool how it did that and how it played with that. And also that you assume that it's an alien because it's a UFO and it looks so weird, but it's also based on deep sea animals, which do exist on Earth. So you start questioning, is it an alien or is it from this planet? Like so many interesting things this film did.
If we end up discovering that another alien species has DNA, then, I mean, it's alien to this world perhaps, but we are still connected somehow maybe. We don't know. I mean, the transpermia idea. Yeah, I said it. No, it's very interesting, and you think about how the fact that an octopus and you have anything in common.
Yeah.
You know, but at some point down the line, we're all cousins, right?
Yeah.
Every time I eat a mushroom, I think about like this is even closer to me than a tree is. You know?
Yeah.
Like this is more like me than it is like a tree by a long shot.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like the diversity of, like, we were talking about that a little bit at the beginning of the conversation, but just all these different creatures that are kind of referencing nature, and then there's so many fucking examples of just wacky ass stuff that really exists out there.
Yeah, millions of species that have existed, exist, and will exist, all designed to function within a very, very specific selection of factors. It's wild.
What about the Babadook?
Well, the
It's one of
Babadook.
my favorite fear response monsters.
That's a really cool one, yeah, for sure. I feel like it was kind of based on Dr. Caligari with the hat and stuff like that, and the sort of
Really?
crazy style. That's why I reckon they were, maybe that's what they were referencing with that. But yeah, that's cool. It's got some good imagery in it, that.
And it was one of those movies that the first time that I watched it, I didn't think much of it. I was just like, okay, that was like a weird monster movie. And then like the second time I watched it, I'm like, oh, there's something more to this. But it's you can very easily project your own insecurities onto that monster. So like there's the great scene towards the end of the film, spoilers again, where the mother is just telling the school headmaster or whatever, like, you realize that all of these events have taken place in like 2 weeks. And she's like, we had some things we needed to sort out, and that's about it. And that's the whole story to the rest of the world. But like that, every single person goes through that sort of like, this is my private struggle that no one is, I have this monster locked up in my basement that I have to feed every once in a while, all this sort of thing. Another good example was It Follows. We talked about Disaster Piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Great composer, but that monster is also, it just assumes the body of another person and walks towards you. That's it. And it just keeps a beeline on people. That's enough to inspire fear. But why is that? Why is that so terrifying?
Yeah, there's also kind of like human monsters. I watched the 1923 Hunchback of Notre Dame in Amsterdam last week or the week before. It was being, you have the Pate Tuschinski Theatre, which is voted the most beautiful theatre in the world. Yeah. And the entire stage is an instrument. It's one of a handful of very old types of organs that were played live to music. And Aaron, I think Hawthorne is his name, is a organ player, one of the few people in the world who can play this instrument, who tours to Amsterdam on occasion.
Remind me to introduce you to Tony Manfredonia after this.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But yeah, so Aaron comes to Amsterdam on occasion to perform improvised music to silent horror movies as they were intended to be performed. And I saw Hunchback of Notre Dame recently. And Hunchback is included as one of the classic Universal monsters.
Really?
But he's a human. So he's a human monster. I mean, you could say that's kind of ableist, you know? he's you know, like a deformed person. He's being considered a monster. But yeah, monsters appear in different ways. And human monsters are probably the scariest ones of all because those actually exist, you know?
You said The Thing was the movie that scared you the most. I think, if I really think about it, it was the Amityville Horror.
Oh.
My mom and I watched the Amityville Horror, the original, like the day that we moved into a new house.
Oh, great.
I was like too young to see this. It fucked me up for the rest of my life. Even still, I like not very comfortable in a new place.
Right.
But the monster in the film, you never see it except for this one shot that's just like a split second and you see like a silhouette in the window and that's it. And if you freeze frame on it, it's not scary at all, but it fucking wrecked me when I was a kid. Yeah.
Funny that certain films are able to do that, just like how Psycho ruined showers forever and Jaws ruined the beach forever.
Yeah. Now, Psycho's a great example. Hitchcock was very interesting in his, I mean, you would talk about human monsters. And serial killers there exist.
Exactly.
We have sociopaths around us right now, for all I know. Some of them might be watching this and trying to figure out what our location might be and when they can whack us. So let's make sure we go on LinkedIn and Twitter and post it all. No, but that's like the most scary thing in the world because that's a real life monster.
Yeah.
You know, Charles Manson, real life monster.
Indeed.
Ted Bundy, real life monster.
And yeah, like fictional monsters, creature monsters. I don't know how else to put it. Yeah, that's where they're a metaphor for real fears and real real meaning. They're vessels for meaning. That's always how I approach creatures and monsters. And I think watching a lot of Universal horror growing up as a kind of weird kid also kind of affected my perspective on monsters and creatures. Like, while I've been here, there's been a lot of emphasis on scary monsters, but I'm actually a really big fan of sympathetic monsters. Probably, like, I connect to the monsters. I feel for Frankenstein's monster, who didn't ask to be born, is doing his best to sort of, like function, but also isn't equipped to understand the world around him, and everybody's getting angry with him and wants to destroy him while he's just doing his best to sort of find a way to fit in. Or the Gill Man, also the same thing, like they're invading his place and bringing in all this stuff when he was just minding his own business living here, and now there's all these people here messing up his territory. And like I think also, for example, the director of Frankenstein was a closeted homosexual. And I think once you know that really sort of opens up the kind of the meaning that was being expressed through these monsters, where, it's like, it's the only reason they're monsters is because the environment around them has deemed them so. And I think a lot of that comes through in the way that these films were made and the types of people who were making these films. Like there were also a lot of, in early Hollywood horror movies, a lot of the people working in them were Jews who'd escaped from Nazi Germany, for example, and gone to America to get away from real monsters, And I think that influences how I approach creature design and monster design as well. Like, for example, a lot of Monster Hunter comes up a lot when I'm teaching students, because the designs in those games are beautiful. They're really, really cool. They're well animated, well researched. They have fictional zoology, excellent examples. And students ask me occasionally what I think of Monster Hunter. But the thing is that I played a Monster Hunter game on the PSP, which was my first experience. And I was told in the game that I needed weapons. So because I'm a starter, I should go and I should attack these herbivores next to this lake. And then when I was there, it said, because you're not very strong, go for one of the babies. It's like, okay. So I started attacking the baby. And these are just like these beautiful animals in their natural habitat. And I'm coming along. They're minding their own business. They're not threatening me. They could have at least put, and also they're like attacking our village, or there's too many of them and it's destroyed. Something. No, I just came in and started killing the babies. And then the adults started coming and trying to protect the babies. And I just thought to myself, they're not the monsters. I am. I just feel like an asshole when I play Monster Hunter. And it's a shame because mechanically, and I find the gameplay really interesting and the designs are beautiful, but I just can't get past that, like, with it.
No, I mean, a phrase, a word that keeps coming to my mind as we talk about this is like xenophobia itself is like the definition of a monster, right? Like it's throughout history many times, like a monster is simply a perspective. Yeah. Frankenstein himself, right, he didn't have any bad intentions. Frankenstein's monster, I should say, had no bad intentions. He was just trying to get along with his life. Everyone rejects him. And so many people can empathize with that because I feel like everyone has probably felt that way at some point in their life, and they haven't. They're a fucking psycho. So that you probably shouldn't trust them.
I've actually heard a theory that the reason why sci-fi movies were so popular in the 50s in America was because of xenophobia, this idea of an outer force from another place coming and taking over, being a real anxiety, which is why it resonated with audiences so much.
Western and Northern Europe, there's a lot to discuss, but as an American, I feel like people don't really fully appreciate how absolutely terrified of Russia we were during that time, and it's so apparent in our fiction. Like Red Dawn, as far as I understood, that was like real life. You know? Like that could have been a documentary at a certain point. And, then I came here and met like Dimitri and all those guys. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're all just the same, you know?
Yeah.
But we were so fucking scared. Like, my grandparents were like the duck and cover generation. You know?
Right.
Like, every school desk was made out of steel. Not that it would have saved you, but at least the illusion.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just this absolute fear of the unknown and this other thing that's always looming outside of it. It's like Lovecraftian horror almost, but IRL. Lovecraft was another one of my favorite examples in the same way as like Hitchcock we were talking about, because he would do a lot less description, than you would think is necessary, and the vagueness is what makes it so terrifying.
He also focuses a lot on the experience invoked by the monster, which I think is a wise use of the medium of literature. Because if you're describing what's there, why not have a picture, you know? But the feeling invoked through words, it's like poetry. That's something that can only be done through words, like the visual imagery in a person's mind. I think that's a very, very intelligent use of literature for horror, for sure.
Or in anything. But speaking of xenophobia, you really like xenomorphs.
I do, yeah.
So why are they the best of the best?
They're an excellent case study in good creature design, and I bring them up a lot because they're such a great example to pull out as a clear example for students for things. And I think the thing that I love so much about them is that they very, very clearly, from their design to the scenes that they're involved in, to even their fictional life cycle, is connected to the themes of Alien. And the specific theming of Alien differs per film, but in the original film, there's multiple interpretations. But I think a very strong theme in the original film is like the taking away of bodily autonomy. And when you look at like the way that aliens are designed, there's a lot of kind of rape imagery in it. I mean, there was a lot of rape imagery in H.R. Giger's art in general, which is why he was an absolutely perfect fit. His art was already invoking themes similar to the film. So like the sort of penis-shaped head and the face hugger like cage and wrapping around the throat, like the imprisonment and choking and things like that. The fact that it injects itself into your body, and also the fact that the final form takes on genetic material of its host. So when a xenomorph gestates inside of a human, it's humanoid, but if it gestates inside of a dog, say, then it's more kind of dog-like on all four legs and things like that, which is also kind of like taking away a part of somebody without their permission. And
it's identity theft.
Yeah.
I'll sue that motherfucker. It's a criminal offense.
I had a creature design teacher in Los Angeles, and his interpretation of Alien was, he brought it up a lot as a great example. And he said that he particularly noticed that men find the alien really scary, and his theory was because xenomorphs create a situation that most cis men cannot experience, which is being raped and having to give birth to your rapist's baby. And that's something that normally cis men would be not able to experience. But when the alien exists, then you can go through this extremely awful experience that you thought you were immune to. And I thought that was a really interesting interpretation of the film. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are just very, very well done about xenomorphs. They're so iconic. There's a reason why 70s, how long are we along? Like 70s, 80s, 90s? God, 50 years, Jesus Christ, like 40, 50 years later.
Some of them happy.
It's still an IP that's around. They're still making games about it. They're still making comics about it. And there's a reason for that, you know? Like it invokes a lot. It really captures the imagination of the audience. Mm-hmm. It's just fantastic. I have a big alien queen in my house.
When I was visiting Horsham, I got to hang out with some of the guys from Creative Assembly, and we're talking about the design of Alien Isolation and all that. Mm. I'm like, what a great game. Mm. What a fucking truly fantastic game, because it's the perfect monster. There's just one of them, and it's always there, and you can't kill it. Yeah. And it's gonna get you. There's no other way around it, and you're just trying to navigate through the narrative one step at a time. You know, did you play it? Did you ever play that game?
Yes.
What system did you play it on? PC?
I played it on PC, yeah.
So if you played it on PlayStation, there was like that thing where the microphone is on the controller.
Oh.
It was on by default. And in that game, they put in this thing where if you made noise, the controller would hear it and it would alert the alien. And people did not know this. Like, it was not communicated to the audience at all.
That's cool.
That's one of the things that I love about game design. Another example is Amnesia: The Dark Descent. We talked about that a bit yesterday, but the whole sanity system with the lanterns and all that, like they just lie to you. The designers just lie to you. They just literally gaslight you. Where it's like, you need to keep this lamp on or have a candle or something so that you never go too long in the dark, because then you'll lose your sanity and you're more likely to get attacked. But none of it's true.
That's great,
It's
because
fake anxiety.
Yeah, and it invokes like paranoia in the player as well. Whereas false information is great.
So much of human experience is people doing irrational, cyclical habits that just ground them and make them feel better. Whatever it is, and it could be. I'll not even go into whether or not the effect is real, but like it could be a prayer, it could be a mantra, it could be like the little meditation that we did at the beginning of this thing. Whatever it is, it's technically kind of useless in a way, but for whatever reason, that practice seems to ground people. It seems to be a very important part of human nature.
You know, there's an element of PT that I read about that when
Playable teaser.
That when you're playing that game, it's connected. When you're playing that game, it renders the monster behind you at all times, so the player never sees it. I love that so much. What a cool
It's unnecessary,
thing.
but it's just good.
It's so, like, knowing that is just like really awesome in that game. Little details like that really matter when people are making games.
So you were born in Ireland.
Yes, in Dublin.
Dublin.
Yeah.
All right. What was that like? 10-ish years before you moved? So you must have had some experience.
Yeah, a little bit. I went through most of primary school in Ireland. Most of my life I've spent in the Netherlands. I don't really feel Dutch though. I don't know. Like Holland has a bit of a weird relationship with its foreigners. I do like Holland because it's stable. I mean, my family's there. The schools are good. The healthcare is good, and things like that. But I do very much miss the people in Ireland. Like something that I really love about Dublin is if you stand in the city and you spend more than about 20 seconds like looking at your phone and looking around, someone will come up to you and say like, "Where are you going? Maybe I can help you." And if they don't know, they'll ask somebody like, "Hey, do you know where this street is?" And even in the city, while in Amsterdam, I mean, this is the case in a lot of big cities, but it feels like people have blinders on where they're just like focused on what it is that they're doing, and they'll just like bump into you and just sort of not say anything as they're going about their business and things like that. So I miss that. I miss that about Ireland, and I'd spend a lot of time outside in Ireland. Like a lot of my family live in Bray, which is a coastal town, so I'd spend a lot of time like on the pebble beaches or up on Bray Head in the mountains and things like that, which I'm grateful that I was able to do. And again, Pokemon related, a lot of time spent on the playground swapping cards and things like that. Those are some good memories.
Pokemon.
Yeah. Pokemon. And also playing point and click adventures with my dad and my sister. There was some very fun memories of that.
That's what I love about point and click games so much, is that you can play them as a group.
Yeah.
It's so seamless. It's not a lot of pressure. And you can kind of just like group make decisions and everything. I was a huge fan of the Telltale games.
Oh yeah.
All of those.
Good stuff.
Wolf Among Us, Walking Dead, seasons 1 and 2. Even the Game of Thrones one wasn't too bad. But God damn, they just nailed it. They knocked it out of the park.
It's good stuff, yeah. It's something that's really weird about, there's other games that kind of do it, but point and click games in particular, when you turn the game off, you're still kind of playing it. You'd be thinking about how to solve a puzzle and then have an aha and then go back and try again. I always find that crazy when when a game sort of follows you outside of when you're sitting at the computer playing it. It's wild. I love that about that genre of game in particular.
What does it mean to be Irish?
What does it mean to be Irish?
Outside of the obvious, to be from Ireland or whatever, but like, what's the spirit of that? What do you carry with you?
I think a lot of Irish people feel this need to go somewhere else, just because historically Ireland is very like out of balance and a lot of problems.
We have this joke. It's not really a joke because it's an absolute fact. But there are more Irish in America than there have ever been in Ireland.
Yeah.
Like there are more Irish, or there are more Puerto Ricans in America that could possibly inhabit the island of Puerto Rico. But
yeah.
We sort of have this spreading across the world aspect.
Yeah, and that's kind of a thing that's kind of typically Irish, the sort of need to go somewhere else. Also maybe because it's an island country. I mean, that might also be a factor, sort of like similar to small country mentality and things like that. You also carry a lot of the kind of like the cultural aspects as well, like a lot of the music and the writing and the folklore and things like that.
Just sad, being sad.
And it's funny as well because like something that I had anyway growing up, there was a lot of superstitions, and I'm not a superstitious person. I know that it's just sort of magical thinking, but things like if you see a circle of mushrooms, that's a fairy circle, and if you go in it, you'll be trapped forever in fairyland, so don't do that.
We've proven that wrong twice.
But still, if I see a circle of mushrooms, I get a little bit worried about it. It's funny that but it's quite fun, you know, like sort of, sometimes when you're in the countryside, it does feel like maybe fairies could exist or something like that. And it's quite fun to kind of indulge in that sort of magical thinking, which a lot of Irish people do.
A lot of the folks where I'm from were very superstitious. I remember like we had this very strict rule about like, you know, someone hands you an open blade, you're not supposed to close it. You have to hand it back open.
Oh,
if they
really?
hand you a closed blade, you open it yourself and you close it before you get back to them. Otherwise, it's deathly bad luck.
Oh,
like,
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't
more
know why.
paranoia for me then. Thanks.
Yeah. Just for the next time you need to use a pocket knife, just remember. Just remember. But no, it's interesting. I've never been to Ireland.
No way.
Never.
Oh, you should. You'd love it.
Only just recently went to the UK. But I grew up my entire life being an Irish American.
Right.
So it's like this pilgrimage. It almost feels like if I go, then it's over with. Like,
There's a real separation, right? So like, I had it once at I think it was Gamescom or maybe GDC. It was GDC. But I saw that there was a Irish game developer meetup. And I haven't lived in Ireland since I was 10. I don't really know the community there. And I went, and I was a little bit, because of my experience in the Netherlands, which I'll get to shortly, I was a little bit sort of like, am I welcome here? Should I be here? And from that moment, like it was, you're part of the Irish community. And I love that about Irish culture, that it's like, bring it on, you're welcome. And once you're Irish, you're always Irish. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, you are never Dutch if you weren't born there. If you're not white and you were born there, you're still not Dutch in the eyes of Dutch people. And it's really like...
That sounds like some other country I visited once.
It's a real change in attitude. I mean, even in places like America, there is kind of like, once you live here, you are American and you take on all the values of the culture and everything like that.
If you adopt the culture in America, like you're like, I subscribe to these rules, you're in. You're fucking American. Like, to us, or at least in my upbringing. But
and Ireland is similar, but the Netherlands absolutely not.
Never until I moved to Europe did I hear someone say 7th generation immigrant. What does that even mean? You know? Yeah.
But it does create this odd thing where kind of like, I don't really feel at home in any culture, which might also be like why I have this kind of wanderlust, or maybe it's because I have that. I don't really know. But
it's because you're the creature lady.
Maybe. I'm just a weirdo. I don't fit in
you're
anyway.
A freak.
That's what I'm doing wrong. I see.
This is actually an intervention.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, you gotta chill out with the creature stuff.
Oh, bummer. Oh, man.
No?
I'll have to be an accountant or something instead. Or draw fantasy digital wood elves and things like that.
No, but so that must have informed a lot of who you were as a young person, and then you moved to an entirely new country.
Yeah.
And from what you described before, like your parents sort of had to like reinvent the whole family's life.
Yeah.
In a new place. That must have been fucking crazy.
Yeah, I guess it was. The kids are strong, you know, like kids are just sort of like, everything is new and they're not kind of, it's so just anything happens, kids are just kind of like, okay, at least I was. So you just kind of roll with it. And yeah, I did. I mean, I am grateful for the experience because it means that you sort of see, the world is my home. I don't feel like there's anywhere that I can't go or I'm afraid to go kind of thing. You know, unless it's like a war or something, and then there's a reason. But just sort of like, oh, I don't know if I get on with the culture. It's like, I'm sure I could figure it out kind of thing.
In general, no matter where I've been, if you know how to kind of convey gratitude and smile, it's pretty much okay.
Yeah,
right?
and people are people. You know, that's a real important thing to remember.
You just need to say, you know, thank you, 2 more beers, please, and like I love you, and that's pretty much as far as, I mean, in any language, that'll get you pretty far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also for me, do you have this?
Yeah.
And then point at the phone. Phones make it easier too. Yeah. Like in Japan, sumimasen, kore arimasu ka? Do you have this? And then point at the phone.
I found
That's all you need.
So interesting seeing how you reacted to reading Danish. Because for me as an outsider and also with someone with a background in linguistics, I don't speak Danish like fluently by any stretch of the imagination, but like I figured out how to like read it and sort of like reason through it very, very quickly as an English speaker. And to me, what like from the outside looking in, Dutch and Danish are much closer.
Right.
You know? And yet you were like, I don't fucking know what this means.
Well, I think part of that is a trauma from trying to learn Dutch. Because Dutch people would just make fun of me for trying to speak Dutch. Or they just speak English because it's easier kind of thing. But yeah, like the amount of times that I'd say a word slightly wrong and a Dutch person would just start like pointing and laughing really loudly because I said a word a bit funny. It's awful. It's really awful, you know? And so I get very, very nervous when I have to like read or speak a language that I'm not comfortable in. It's like a real problem for me with languages.
Yeah. I obviously like still have somewhat of an accent, but I remember the day that I made a conscious effort to change the way that I spoke to be more, I don't know, clear or broadly generic, that kind of thing, because I think I was in the 7th grade, and this girl, her name was Catherine, and she was like, you know, the cutest girl in the 7th grade kind of thing. And she just lit into me one day. She's like, you sound so redneck, and just fucking broke my heart. And ever since
Catherine?
Then, yeah.
If you're watching, Catherine, fuck you.
I hope you're doing well.
I'm allowed to say it. Yeah, I'll bet that's also a thing. Like, if you have a Southern accent, the sort of connotations of the accent, that must be, I never thought of that. That must be really difficult.
Interesting. The assumptions that people will make. And I mean, that's anywhere. It's no matter what, you know, everywhere has their stereotypes and that sort of thing. But like, it's either, you know, someone hears my accent and I'm afraid that they're going to think that I'm sort of a racist or, you know, like a maniac in some way. Or the opposite, where it's like like another white dude in a gas station like walks up and says a remark about another individual to you, assuming that you'll get you agree with them and like that kind of thing.
You know, a similar experience that I've had is if for example, like I'm on a booth at a convention, I've had this a couple times in that particular context, and I speak Dutch. People can tell that I'm not Dutch because of the way that I speak. And they say, like, where are you from? I'm from Ireland. And then something along the lines of, oh, wow, your Dutch is very good. Like, how long have you lived here? 20 years. Like, oh, and that's a real surprise for them. And usually it's just sort of this kind of general sort of like, oh, well done. But sometimes I'd get people who would kind of start talking about, oh, you know, because there's a lot of people who come to this country and all they're looking for is welfare. And it's like, well, that's why my family moved to this country. So they think that they have like this sort of comfort where they've sort of found an exception to their assumption. It's like, and then it's like a gotcha.
I was on a plane with this old Danish guy. Name was Lars, now that I think about it. I mean, he was in his 60s probably, you know. It was one of those, like, he's telling me his whole life story. And it was cool, you know, we're drinking wine, we're on an airplane. Couldn't have been bad. But at a certain point, he started talking about, like, in his opinions about immigration and all that kind of thing. And not that I have any real opinion about this foreign country that I live in's policies. Like, I'm happy they let immigrants in. I am one.
Yeah.
But he was talking to me as if I weren't one.
Yeah.
In English.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the hell is going on here? I was the only difference between me and whoever you're talking about is the tone of my skin.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Man, like I had that in high school. If you're watching, Karen, fuck you. I had a teacher once where...
Karen. I love you, Grandma.
I don't mean your grandma. I mean my horrible, horrible Dutch teacher. I don't care if she knows it because she's what a monstrous human being. Where we had a class in Dutch class where we had to read newspapers, and she made assumptions that we understood some kind of issue that was going on. And I didn't have the context that she assumed was there, so I asked about it. And she said, well, there's a policy that if people are foreign in the Netherlands, that they are sent back to the country that they came from. And I said, that's terrible. I'm not from this country. Is my family going to be sent back? And she literally said to me in Dutch, no, you'll be okay. You're white. And I mean, I am fully aware that my negative experience in the Netherlands would be significantly worse if I wasn't white. Also from friends that I have who've experienced much, much worse things than me. I'm fully aware of that. So the xenophobia that I've experienced in what is stereotypically considered a very tolerant country, which was very surprising. It's just like, I know, like, if it's this bad for me, it must be so much worse for other people, and that is so not okay.
How based and epic of you.
Thanks.
No, it's good, because that's essentially the question I was asking. Like, what is it like to be, a stranger in a strange land? I can only speak from my own experience.
Same. And, I'm already kind of a weirdo, so that probably doesn't help as well. Like maybe I seem like a soft target or something like that. But all I know how to be is myself. And that's the experience that I've had. So, but having said that, I mean, the game industry in the Netherlands is honestly a huge reason why I want to stay. Mm-hmm. I feel so welcome. There's such a lovely group of people. I've never...
You all know each other.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird. Like, you posted a picture of you and I at Gamescom, and then I woke up the next morning to Kai, who's also on this podcast. He's like, I see you met Molly. I'm like, how the fuck did you know that? Like, oh, we all know each other. Like,
he messaged me today actually and said he messaged me and said oh, there's such a great load of people, like you're gonna have a great time. It was really sweet.
Yeah. Are you putting a good word for me?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
What did he say?
Oh well, you see that that he likes you very much. And I told him that I've heard his name in a positive light a lot while I've been here.
I love that motherfucker. Hey, he's great.
He's
also
so fun.
Fantastic podcast. If you're listening to this one, you should go back and listen to the one with Kai Friend also.
But with very little exception, because I have had some people where, again, you're never Dutch. So if my company is successful, some people feel like that doesn't count because I'm not Dutch, even though the co-founder of Arcane Circus is Dutch. You're just not able to help people like that. With very, very few exceptions, I've never felt discriminated against as a foreigner, as a woman, as a weirdo, like outside of college and, like that kind of thing. It's a really lovely community, and it's a big reason why I stay, to be honest, that and my family being there. Because as long as I'm able to travel a lot and see other places and get a variety of contexts, I am very, very happy in the Netherlands. And I will say, as cheesy as it sounds, I am grateful for every negative experience that I've had. The way that I approach things is that if you're happy with who you are now, or you're happy with the direction you're going as a person, then all the bad things that have happened to you are the best thing that could have ever happened to you. I really try to experience life through a lens in that way.
It's really funny to hear you say that. Look, I loved my trip to the Netherlands. I felt like, man, these are my fucking people the whole time I was there. But I was also hanging out with friends the entire time. I had like an agenda.
And you can't speak Dutch as well. I've heard some people say that it's great until you can speak Dutch and you can overhear what people are talking about. I have heard some people say that.
Yeah, perhaps. But that's everywhere. It's anywhere you go. I know these dance crews are always talking shit behind my back and stuff.
No, there is no perfect place to live. Otherwise, everybody would live there,
Have you been to Southern California? It's freaking fucking awesome. The weather is great. I lived in Monterey for almost a year. And it was fucking awesome. The only thing that sucks about California is it's quite expensive. And, of course, there's, by American standards, high taxes.
Right. But is that the only reason you don't live there?
Let's see if it costed less money. I wouldn't pick Monterey.
Yeah, well then it's
But
not so
that
perfect,
climate,
then, is it?
like relax. The weather is perfect.
Oh, I see.
The climate itself is it maybe rains once, twice a year, and it's like a little sprinkle, and you go about your day. And it's just fucking awesome. It's great. It's cozy.
All right.
You're never cold. You're never warm.
Yeah, but then there'll be something else like this. I don't know. I like variety. I don't know. Maybe I just like can't settle or something. But I like being in different places and getting different influences. It keeps me feeling creative.
You've been all over. You've been to Japan. You've been to any other places in Asia? Or?
Japan's the only place I've been to in Asia. I've been to Australia. I've been to South America. I've been around Europe. I've been to the States. Yeah, I like traveling a lot.
How many states?
Oh, California.
Okay, so
yeah, I haven't seen it for proper. I do want to though. I'm currently trying to get my driver's license, and once I have that, I really want to go around America and experience.
We're going mud riding.
Yeah,
I'm taking you mud riding.
I'm gonna die.
It's gonna be the best time ever.
That does actually sound really fun.
Yeah, that's some super redneck shit. But I'm
here for it.
Yeah, I mentioned because Luke also was interested. And I mentioned to my parents, like, I'm gonna bring some Europeans, and we're gonna take them do some real serious. We're gonna get drunk on fucking cheap light beer and just race side by sides in ATVs through muddy, dark woods.
Sounds fun as hell.
Get injured.
Yeah.
No helmets.
I'm here for it. That sounds really fun.
All right, see. I think the last thing that I really wanted to touch on was to really dig into what Zenibeasts is and what it means to you and all that sort of thing. So
right.
I'm opening the door now for you to sell your product.
Oh, right. So Zenibeasts comes from I'm a monster kid, and I love classic monster movies.
Really?
And
we hadn't caught on. Pokemon.
Yeah. Drink again. And
Pokemon.
have you ever seen the original Godzilla movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've seen them all.
Really?
I think I've literally seen every single. I had this friend who, like, his parents were fucking rich, and he had all of them. So I if not sat down and watched the entire film, I've at least seen footage of every single.
Sweet, that's great. Movies, yeah. So a lot of people, when they think of Godzilla, they think of kind of cheesy movies where it's rubber suits fighting each other. But the original film is a deeply dark and meaningful film that's really upsetting and really captures this angst that Japan had at the time about nuclear fallout and where technology was going. And Godzilla is this representation of this social anxiety. Then they released Godzilla vs. Anguirus, which was a light sequel. It was kind of riding on the success of the initial film. Then they had a break of I think it was over 10 years actually, but I think it was the 70s where they made King Kong versus Godzilla. And that was playing on, Japan was really, really into wrestling at the time.
They're still
indeed.
Very much into
but
it. Yeah.
There was an uptick there, and they decided that they would make a film kind of riding the coattails of this trend for wrestling. And it's it was targeting a younger audience. It was goofier, it was lower budget, and it's a really, really silly film.
Oh,
and
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's like it's just
nothing gets
Kong
me like
throwing rocks.
The like bubbles, like soap bubbles coming out of the dinosaur's mouth, and like that sort of thing. It's just like, wow, this is some low budget shit.
And the tree, it's a very, very
But they
stupid
recreated
film.
that in the King Kong film.
Yeah, the tree. There's a bit where they throw
the dinosaur's mouth. Like they recreated this scene that was originally stupid as fuck and made it really cool.
Yeah, indeed. So that film, despite it being very stupid, was at the time the highest grossing domestic film in Japan, and kept that for a very, very long time. This was a hugely financially successful film. So Toho...
I bet, because they didn't spend shit on special effects.
So Toho, the studio that makes Godzilla movies, is kind of like, okay, fuck this dark shit. We're going to make stupid movies from now on. And they leaned very heavily into like fight sequences, and less into sort of like using kaiju as a vessel for meaning. And with Zenibeasts, I'm trying to kind of go back to giant monsters representing societal angst. But in the case of the Zenibeasts, I want them to represent toxic social behavior, which it's an issue that comes up a lot in modern society and is destroying the world. And in this context, it's literally destroying the world. However, I want to do it in a way that is kind of comical, because I feel like comedy is able to amplify meaning and able to bring across messages in a more powerful way. So it's kind of like Godzilla meets The Simpsons with Zenibeasts. That is the attempt. So each of the Zenibeasts are designed to kind of be a representation of a particular toxic behavior, like toxic masculinity or Peter Pan syndrome, being toxic online, things like that. And the way that the humans kind of deal with the social issues and how the Zenibeasts kind of learn from one another is also a thing that I want to play with, where the humans kind of try to go about defeating the Zenibeasts in the wrong ways, where they try to use force, or they try to attack the symptom rather than the cause, or just sort of pretend it's not there and things like that. But yeah, that's the sort of thing that I want to play with. It's a very like heavy topic, but I want to do it in a way that's fun and silly and satirical with Zenibeasts.
So each of them representing, one of the modern deadly sins, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. Like internet trolling is clearly different than like a normal person's behavior in real life, that kind of thing. But like, who's this guy?
That's Mashibuni.
And he represents
Toxic masculinity.
What is that? What does that mean to you?
Toxic masculinity for me is the need to
Cooties?
the need to be perceived as strong at the expense of everything else. At the expense of emotional support, at the expense of personal care, at the expense of feeling like one can be vulnerable. And that, what I've attempted to do with Mashibuni's design is that it's this big, cool, tough monster with this big, tough face on the chest. But if you look at the little white thing, he's actually got this little tiny head. So he's actually quite vulnerable. And this is all this kind of puffing to sort of distract from the fact that he's actually quite frail. That was the design thinking behind this particular Zenibeast.
What do you hope that people take away from that character?
Well, I hope that they relate to it, kind of like the Pokemon thing again.
Pokemon?
Where I want the Zenibeasts to appeal to certain people, and then through the stories that we tell and the messaging in the stories that they learn about kind of like, it's okay to be you. Just be careful that you don't do it to an extent that it's so extreme that you end up hurting yourself. So highlighting the strengths of being that type of person while also showing the dangers that can happen if you take it too far and start hurting yourself. And also being okay with certain anxieties that you might have that lead to you presenting yourself in that way. That is the thinking, anyway, behind the project.
So we got toxic masculinity, internet bullying.
Yeah.
What are the other two?
The spreading of false information and Peter Pan syndrome.
Fake news. All right, hold on. Let me make sure I don't forget.
And there may be others in the future because there's an infinite number of issues with society. But right now, there's 4 Zenibeasts.
It's interesting that you picked these 4 things, though. Of all these topics in the whole world, you could have chosen. These are the 4. So why? Those 4. There
are other ones that I'd like to develop in the future if we're able to expand the roster of monsters. 4 were chosen in the beginning because it means you can have 4 players if you build a game around it. That was the thinking. I also wanted them to be universal issues that transcend culture. Is also a thing. Like there was at one point where I was playing with a Zenibeast based on colorism, where non-white communities kind of aspire to be white and sort of feel like certain people are better than others because they are more close to white people. But that was and also Queer topics were another thing that I explored, but I wanted them to be universal issues that people of any background are able to at least relate to somewhat. Like even women are able to relate to the idea of being perceived as strong and not showing weakness, even though it's an issue that, because of the way that society is structured, typically tends to affect men. So that's why these particular issues were chosen, so that they're very distinct from one another and fairly universal, and also hit uniquely different types of people.
So what is Peter Pan syndrome?
Peter Pan syndrome is adults who refuse to take on adult responsibilities. And the way that it manifests is indulging in hobbies and behavior that are typically associated with children. So like it can be like playing video games too much.
No such thing. Rip out today.
Like collectibles, not wanting to get a job, not wanting to be responsible, not being able to commit to relationships, things like that. Like wanting to be a kid forever.
I want to be a kid forever.
Then you might have Peter Pan syndrome.
Why is that bad?
Because it means it can be at the expense of a person's ability to be able to function independently. They're dependent then.
Oh, we had a really interesting conversation about that the other day. Yeah.
I love video games and toys and having fun and all that kind of thing. But if it's at the expense of my ability to function independently, then it becomes a problem.
That sounds like toxic masculinity almost.
They're very similar, yeah. I mean, all of these things.
No, I mean the insistence on being independent.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, like they're opposites. I didn't think of it that way. That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
But all of the behaviors that the Zenibeasts are meant to kind of satirize and criticize, I don't think they're necessarily bad on their own. You know, like I think they're motivated by a good place in many ways, but any behavior taken too far is a problem.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I assume you met 4 people at least, who one of each represents this.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Let's exclude them from the conversation.
Yes, please.
Perhaps a fictional character or celebrity or something like that for each one that you feel maybe. Were there any people or specific events that inspired the creatures and the topics?
There are kind of like general groups of people that I've looked at for ideas for stories or attributes and things like that. For Hagura, who's the cute kaiju that represents Peter Pan syndrome, I looked a lot at Disney adults and kind of like the behaviors that they typically have, and the issues that they might experience, like the lore. And if you go to Zenibeasts.com, there are origin stories for each of the 4 Zenibeasts available for free now. Hagura are attracted to a theme park set within Myopia, which is the name of the city that the Zenibeasts reside in. And that's very, very heavily based on Disney. And Disney kind of obsessing over nostalgia, but then taken to an extreme where this sort of Disney-esque company is intentionally sort of like encouraging its adult fan base to be a child at heart, so that they use their media as a kind of escapism from their adult life. So they keep buying stuff, kind of like they're addicted to drugs, like constantly buying these products that make them feel like a child, so they forget about being an adult. But then it's at the expense of their ability to function as adults. And the Hagura reside in that park and are attracted to it because it's cute and they like cute stuff. So there's stuff like that in it.
So people can go to Zenibeasts. You might need to spell that.
Zenibeasts.com. Zenibeasts.com.
And this is a multimedia franchise, so you're working on short animations, you're working on potentially like a board game?
Yeah, we're working with a production company in France to develop Zenibeasts into, among other things, an animated series, a board game, a comic, a video game, and many other things. We've got big plans for our big monsters.
I wish you the best of luck, Molly.
Thank you.
Skål.
Skål.